Okay. All right. So thank you again for inviting me. I appreciate this. And sorry, everybody, I'm pretty nervous about this. So anyway, so I grew up in New York and I attended the Fashion Institute of Technology, where I studied fashion design and pattern making. Well, I worked in the garment center and I worked for an assistant. I was an assistant to the designer. And I think, my fascination for lampshades started when I was watching Downton Abbey, and they had just these beautiful, beautiful Victorian shades, and I was like, I can make them. I want to learn how to make it, and so I did, and I figured I can figure out how to fabricate them. And I bought several books, and my favorite book was Handmade Lampshades by Natalia Pierce Cabrera. And I took several online classes, and I hope I pronounced her name right. If it's Moji. I called her Moji Design, and it's Moji Designs in the UK. And books are great for learning, but hands-on is so much better, and it's a better way of learning. And there's still so much to learn, and still a lot of mistakes to make. Believe me, I made plenty. So brief history of lampshades. They originated in the 17th century, mostly in France, where they were used to diffuse light and protect your eyes from the glare. Early shades were made of parchment or thin fabric. Eventually, they evolved and started to have decorative elements, different design trends, and became popular in homes as electricity became more widespread. Various shades emerged like Empire, Pleated, Mini, Stained Glass, Drum, Square, and Bell. Vintage lampshades, which were popular in the 20s to the 70s, often featured materials like silk, linen, beautiful trim, unique patterns, and hand-sewn details. So I think, I'm the type of person, I don't like white or off-white lampshades. So why would I have ordinary white or off-white lampshades in my space, my home, or my office? And I think we should be colorful, bold, and make a statement and be extraordinary. Pillows in anyone's home could be changed for different looks or different seasons. Why can't their homes have different lampshades to change out? Another option would be interchangeable box pleated lampshade skirts. And this is a photo from Cecile, if I pronounced that right, home website. Okay, next slide. There we go. There are several different styles of frames, to name a few: the Empire, Tiffany, Coulis, Cone, Drum, Bell, Square Rectangular, Hexagon, and Carousel. Now, this is the anatomy of a lampshade. You have the top ring, you have your fitting, you have gimbals, you have the struts, and a bottom ring. Now, there could be more than 3 gimbals. There could be 4. It all depends on the size of the frame. I'm pretty sure the most that I've seen is 4. And this is a bell-shaped frame, and the struts are curved. You could do a gathered shade on this, or you could do, I'm talking about soft shades, a gathered shade, or even a pleated shade, or just a fitted soft shade, and we'll talk about that later. Now, this is a ring set, and this came from Danel's in the UK, and it's a US fitting. And it has in the center is a 1/2 inch, it's recessed by a 1/2 inch, and that will get attached to your harp, and your finial gets screwed onto the top of that. Now, it's pretty costly to get supplies from Danel's. The shipping is really expensive, but you get better quality. I think better quality. Um, this is a frame that's from the UK, from Danel's actually, and it's got a UK fitting. So you can get a spider, and the spider will hook around this ring here, and it gets attached to your harp, and then the finial will screw in here. So they come in various sizes. You can get, this is about a 3 inch. you can get them 4 or 5 inches so that it comes above and you can actually see a finial at the top above here. I mean, if none of this makes sense, please let me know. And then most frames are measured by the top frame, the top diameter, the bottom diameter, and the height. And usually, if you read something that's, let's say, on Etsy, and it'll give you measurements, and it's usually always the top diameter by the bottom diameter by the height. Hang on one second. Okay, fabric that can be used. You can use cotton, linen, silk, satin, velvet, tweed, twill, and even paper can be used. Vintage scarves can also be used. My preference is cotton for drum shades and some soft shades. The weight, lighter to medium weight, fabrics are easy to work with and allow for light to show through. Some medium to heavy weight fabric can be challenging, especially when doing the fabric, rolling the fabric under the rings for the drum shade. Design, consider if a strong or larger design is to be showcased, good for drum shades, or a more flowing design suitable for both drum and empire shades. The texture, choose fabrics based on the desired texture, from smooth and elegant silk to more rustic linen or burlap. Trim, there's so many options. You could be subtle, colorful, or wild. The shade might not need any trim at all. Color, select colors that complement the room's decor and the overall style you're aiming for. The lining, consider using a lining fabric for added color and light diffusion, or maybe a more traditional look is desired. This is a beautiful shade with a pleated lining and exquisite trim. The inspirational picture taken from Samuel and Sons website. The Lumiere glass beaded fringe in rose gold from Samuel and Son, lamp designed by Tonini Interior. Another inspirational shade with trim courtesy of Samuel and Sons website, a silk shade made of Paratine, designed by Barry Benson, featuring Carolina ombre tassel fringe in rosewater from Lori Weitzner's Couture collection. This trim is also from Samuel and Son, can be put on the bottom of a drum or soft shade. The trim would have to be pliable enough to go around the shade and applied with glue or adhesive tape. This would make a statement without any other trim. I usually estimate the yardage needed after I know what type of shade I'm making. It is the same as making window treatments. Know what the repeat is, vertically or horizontally. Also look at the pattern and see what would work best for the overall placement of the shade. We all know when fabricating window treatments, there is sometimes a lot of fabric that ends up on the floor of your workroom. Sometimes this is the case with lampshades as well. This shade is now in a gentleman's log cabin in California. We talked about what he wanted, and I sent him several different photos of fabric that I thought would work. He wanted the one in the photo, and it fits perfectly in his space. Basic drum shade and soft shade with trim and velvet strut along the struts. The picture on the left is a soft bell shade with a balloon lining. The picture on the right is a basic hard drum shade made with one-sided PVC. When drum lampshades are fabricated, single-sided PVC is attached to the wrong side of the face fabric. Now, PVC in the US is called pressure-sensitive styrene. And it's completely different from the PVC that I get from the UK. So the pressure-sensitive styrene that I was getting from a supplier, it would easily dent, and you can't get those dents out. But the PVC that comes from the UK, it's not dent free. You can get a little bit of denting when you're manipulating a big roll on your work table, but it's not as easy to, I'm going to say, make a dent. So anyway, the PVC is attached to the wrong side of your face fabric. You leave enough at the top and bottom to roll around the rings inside of the shade. There are different choices with the PVC. You can also use double-sided PVC, which you can attach fabric to the inside of your shade. There are also different colors that are available: bronze, gold, or champagne, to name a few. That is on one side of the PVC, which will be the inside of your shade. You then attach the PVC to the wrong side of your face fabric. Fabric doesn't have to be used for your lampshade. There are so many different options with beautiful printed paper. Trim can also be added to just the bottom of the shade or top and bottom. Now, this is what I was talking about with the double-sided PVC. You can have your outside of your frame with, this was linen, and then the inside is another linen fabric, so that when it's lit, this is when it's unlit, but when it's lit, the design from the inside will show on the outside, which is really cool.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really neat what you could do. So the materials for a hard shade, drum, coulis, or cone, fabric, PVC, single-sided, double-sided, or colored, ring set, double-sided tape. I use double-sided basting tape from Wawa. Tool to roll the fabric under the rings. I use a point turner from Clover. A small butter knife and or an old credit card would work. I also use a tool used for manicures, which is this. And it's great because it has this flat little piece here, which helps to tuck some of the fabric under. That's the most challenging part of making a drum shade, is getting the fabric to roll under. And then you have a roller for the overlap and a glue stick, which I'll talk about later of what you use the glue stick for. I use a lot of fray check. I use close pegs, tape measure, tailor's chalk or pencil, paper scissors, and fabric scissors. This is the basting tape I use. I use a combination of the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch. Okay, so now we're going to look at how I fabricate a shade. So this is the PVC that I get. It's Stick It from the UK. And this is the backing that gets peeled off. So now I'm ready to measure. First I have to measure the circumference of my rings. And then after that, you have the height of your shade, and that depends on the lamp, the client, designer, or your choice. Cut the PVC using the ring circumference plus 3/4 of an inch for the overlap and the height that has been decided on. These are my measurements for the shade that I'm making. It's 50.5 inches for the length. Ring circumference of 49 3/4 plus 3/4 of an inch for the overlap, height of 12 inches. Cut the PVC using your measurements, your exact measurements. Now this is the PVC. Now this is my fabric. It's a piece of wool. And the problem was it was a small piece. So what I'm going to say of how to prepare is going to be different from what I actually have here. I didn't have enough fabric to allow for the edges. So the important thing, first of all, when you're fabricating a hard or soft shade, make sure there aren't any loose threads on your table. You wouldn't want any threads in between the face fabric and lining or between your PVC and face fabric. When your completed shade is fixed on your client's lamp and it is lit, the loose threads will show through. So the fabrication of a drum shade is you position the fabric flat face up on your work table. Choose your focal point on the fabric, then place your cut PVC as a template on top of it and mark with pins all around the PVC, around the edges. These edges, the long edges and the short edges. Now mark with chalk or pencil approximately 4 inches, which would be from here out, all around from where you have marked with pins. Cut the fabric at the 4-inch marks you have made. So obviously I don't have 4 inches on the edges, so disregard what's here. Remove the PVC template, turn the fabric so it's now face down. You have to press your fabric and make sure there aren't any loose threads. And now we're ready. This is the PVC that peels back. You peel back a bit of the PVC backing. Usually I work from left to right. Place the PVC in between where you place the pins. So this is the sticky part in here. This is the part that peels off, and this is going to be the inside of your shade. Once in position, slowly start peeling the backing off and smooth and stick down bit by bit, checking that there are no air bubbles as you go. Now, once your PVC is adhered to your fabric on the long ends, these ends, you're going to measure 3/4 of an inch from the edges of the PVC. Cut away the excess fabric. Now, on one short end, which is this end, you're going to measure 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the PVC, from this edge, 3/8 of an inch, and mark it. And I usually put fray check along this edge. Place a 1/2 inch double-sided tape along the edge of the fabric, the width of the PVC. So from this edge to this edge, you're going to put your tape. So since that's only 3/8 of an inch and you're putting 1/2 inch tape there, you're going to have like 1/8 of an inch that's going to be on your PVC. Remove the tape backing and fold the 3/8 of an inch fabric border. You're going to fold this now over onto the PVC, and then you're going to end up with a crisp finished edge. Now you're going to put a length of a 1/4 inch double-sided tape on top of the fabric that was just folded over, the width of the PVC. So you're going to start it here where your PVC is and finish it at the other side of where the PVC is. So you're going to leave the backing of the tape in place for now. You don't want to put the tape right up against the edge. You want to leave a tiny, maybe a 1/16 of an inch of fabric showing right on the edge there. Everybody can see my pointer, right? I hope so.
Yes, yes.
Great. Okay. On the edges beyond the PVC, where the 3/8 of an inch is folded over, on the 3/4 inch sides you left for tucking, which is here, you're going to have a folded edge along this 3/4 of an inch. So what you want to do is you're going to get your glue stick and you're going to put a little bit, you could use one of your tools, put a little bit of the glue on there, and you're going to put it inside that fold, not on the PVC, but just on the fabric. So this is going to help when you're tucking. So what I do is I put a clothespin on the edge of it and I just let it sit for a little bit until it adheres. Okay. Okay. Now on the other short side, you're going to mark with a chalk or pencil line right up against the PVC. And you're still on where your PVC is facing up, and you're going to mark along that short edge along that PVC on your fabric. So now you're going to flip the PVC and fabric over so that the face fabric is now facing up and PVC is facing down. So you're going to peel back a small amount of the PVC on the short end that you just marked. After you peel back a little bit of that PVC, you should see the line you drew with the chalk or pencil. Cut inside that marked line towards where the PVC would be, and then put fray check. And now the reason for that is because this is going to be the inside that gets the overlap, and you don't want to see any loose threads showing on the inside of your shade. So let me just see if I can show you this. So this is the same shade. Now, I don't know if you can see this. This is the seam, and this is where you don't want any loose threads to show. You want it to be a clean finish.
So where the two sides of the PVC meet, make
Yes,
sure it's
where,
clean.
yes,
Okay.
because there's going to be an overlap, but this piece is going to be the piece that is showing. It's going to be the inside of your shade. So you don't
Okay.
want any frayed edges or anything. So I always put fray check there and make sure that you just see PVC. You don't see any fabric showing either.
I
So
have a question.
sure.
Is the PVC repositionable when right after you put it down, if you get an air bubble or you get off course?
So yes, you can reposition it, but you might end up with a little bit of fluff from your fabric on it.
Mhm.
I've had to do it before and I had success doing it. But so that's, yes, so you can reposition. So that's when if you peel that PVC back, when you want to cut away your fabric that I'm just talking about, um, it's easy enough to peel back and then reseal it. But if you have air bubbles, when you have the face fabric facing up, you can smooth those out. And you can use your roller that I suggested as one of the tools and smooth out, but your hand should get any air bubbles that are out. And yes, you can reposition it. I don't
Right.
see pulling all of it off,
Mhm.
but you could pull some of it off. I
Right.
hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Um, so now, once you put fray check along the cut edge, you can press the PVC back to where you peeled it off. The PVC should now extend ever so slightly beyond the fabric. So you can see a little bit of the PVC along the edge here. So there's no fabric, it's just PVC. This is in case there is fraying, it won't show where the PVC overlaps. Place a 1/4 inch double-sided tape, the width of the PVC again, just the PVC, not into your 3/4 of an edge on your fabric, along the edge of the face fabric, and don't remove the backing yet. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your 1/2 inch double-sided tape and you're going to put it on your ring set, and you're going to try to center that tape, have your ring in the center of the tape. When you're ready to roll the rings onto the prepared PVC and fabric, you take the paper off the tape then. When you remove the tape, gently with your fingers, tap the tape so it wraps around the rings. You don't want to manipulate it too much and you get your fingerprints all over it. Not that that's going to show, but I think it'll be less sticky with the more you touch it. So this is here, this is the ring, and you can see the tape along the edge. This is what you're going to just slightly stick so it goes around your ring. Now on your table, now what you're going to do is you're going to place the PVC facing up, and the short end that doesn't have the tape on the PVC, where you just see the PVC, the tape is actually on the fabric side. So this is where you start adding your fabric to the rings. You have to make sure that your top ring has the recessed fitting and gimbals facing inwards. This is also where you need to know which is the top of your shade, of where when you've figured out your fabric, of where your design is, and if it's a one-way design, you want to make sure that you have the top and bottom, you distinguish between the two. So here what I did was the tape is on the rings, and I started at the clean finished, no tape on this PVC. You're going to line up line up the ring with the edge of the PVC. You want to make sure the edge is on the edge of your ring, the outside of your ring. This part right here, you're going to have the PVC right under the edge of this ring. You're working carefully and you're using both hands. Start rolling the rings along the edges of the PVC. Now, you don't have to use clothespins, but the reason I use clothespins, now this is where I learned when I took a class, and I like the idea of it, um, is especially if you have fabric that frays a lot. As you're rolling, this part of your fabric here can get stuck onto the tape. And if the fabric frays a lot, you're going to have the dickens of a time to get the fabric off of that ring. And it's going to fray even more. You want to try to keep the fabric from fraying as much as possible. So as you're rolling and use the clothespins to hold it in place, and then you can also use the clothespins as a way to set your frame, your shade on your table for when you're ready to roll. Okay. Now here we are again, and you could see like right here, it looks like there's a piece of fabric that's going over on the ring. So if that happens, you just gently want to pull it so that it's facing outwards again. All right, so you're now almost to the end. You have to stop about 1.5 inches. I mean, you don't have to stop at 1.5 inches, but give yourself enough room where you can pull off the tape. Now you're going to pull the backing from the tape on both ends. So this side is the underneath. You could see a little bit of the PVC showing right here. This is what's going to be on the inside of your shade. So you remove both, and then both tapes. This is going to be on the outside of the shade, this piece here. And then you want to continue rolling the rings along the PVC until the two ends of fabric overlap one another. Now here is where this is a clean finish inside here. This is where you want to make sure there was no threads. This is where you pulled back the PVC, one of the other slides that we saw, and you put your fray check. There are no threads here. It's clean finish. So now you can take your roller and you want to roll along that overlap so that it's flat. And you firmly can go rub back and forth on that to make sure that it stays as flat as you can. Okay, so now you want to clip into your gimbal. So when I had said that you want to make sure your gimbals and your this ring set here, I don't know, not ring set, but you want to make sure this is facing in. You could see that this is facing in. If you had put it wrong, this would be facing out, and that wouldn't work for on a lamp. A pendant light, possibly, but not a lampshade on a lamp. So you're going to clip into where your gimbals are, and you want to do a little bit at a time. You don't want to clip all the way to your ring. You want to just clip it and do a little bit at a time, because that's going to fold over, and you need to clip it so that it can go around that gimbal. I apply fray check along there too, because it's going to fray. As the clothespins are taken away, pull the fabric up, pull it up towards the ceiling, and then you're going to wrap it around that ring set. And you can see I have fraying. This is wool, and it frays a lot. So you're going to do that all along the top. We're working along the top, and you're going to rest. This is the bottom. It's going to rest on those clothes pegs. That's what I like about the clothes pegs, is you can use it as a stand. So what you're going to do is when you pull it to the top and you fold it over, you're going to work, once you get around the whole thing, you're going to work with your fingertips and you're going to try to push it underneath that ring. Don't force it. You might have to go around 3 or 4 times so that, and you'll see as you're doing it, it's going to be less and less fabric showing inside of that frame because it's already starting to wrap around the ring. And what you also need to do is, as you see any loose threads from the frame, you want to clip them. You don't want any of those loose threads showing once everything's wrapped around the ring. Now this is the tool that I use from Clover. So once I get almost a good bit of it tucked with my fingers going around and around, then you start working with the tool of your choice. You can use a butter knife, one of the old-fashioned butter knives, not a large butter knife that you would use. And you're going to start working slowly, going around. You might have to go around 3 or 4 times again until you get everything tucked. And what you're going to do is you're going to leave where you have that overlap, you're going to leave that for last. So here is the overlap that I have left. And so what I want to do is I didn't take a picture of this. This is from the other shade that I had made. So this piece that's along this ring is under this piece. So this is the overlap that we were talking about, which is this. This is the overlap. So in here, that's underneath, that's on the inside of the shade, you're going to clip away a little bit of the bulk. But you want to make sure that you don't clip this because that's what's going to show. So you're just going to take a little bit of that bulk out. And then you're going to tuck that under, you're going to tuck that under the ring and still leave this loose for now. This is the little edge right here is where you put that glue, use the glue stick. It's keeping those two things to get the fabric together where it was folded over. Now, once everything is tucked, you're going to then now work on this overlap, the outside overlap. And it's going to take time because there's thickness there and there's bulk. You're going to have to slowly, slowly keep tucking and tucking until it's completely under the ring. I hope that that makes sense of what I was saying about clipping the inside and do not.
It just sounds very tedious because
It
I
is.
understand the bulk and then you're in a tiny small area there and you're trying to get it all tucked up underneath.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and now when I tucked around these gimbals, that's where I used the credit card. I used the credit card for behind there because it's flat. My tool is flat, but not flat enough. And I also use that little tool that is for doing a manicure. It's flat enough to help get some of this behind the gimbal underneath because some of these parts are pretty tricky. I think they're tricky. Somebody else might think it's easy. Now this is the shade, all finished and tucked. This is from the top, and this is from the view from the bottom. And this is where that overlap is. You're going to have, it's going to be a tiny little bit of a bulk, but not that much.
It's
And
clean
so
and beautiful. It looks beautiful, very clean looking.
it is. If you put your tape, your double stick tape, not along the edge of the overlaps, you won't see any of the sticky residue of the tape. It'll be absolutely clean. And this is the finished shade.
Very pretty. I love the colors.
Yeah, I like anything that's colorful.
Mhm.
So when fabricating a coulis cone shade with rings, a pattern will have to be made. The reason for this is because the top and the bottom rings are two different sizes. In the book, Handmade Lampshades by Natalia Price Cabrera, she has a step-by-step instruction. She has step-by-step instructions with pictures on how to fabricate the pattern. I always make a note on the pattern that has the top and bottom ring measurement, ring circumference, and the shade height. So this one is not as noticeable, but the top one is definitely smaller than the bottom one. And your pattern is going to be shaped. It's not going to be a half circle. Well, that all depends on the size of your rings, because if you have large rings, your pattern is going to be arched, I guess, like making a half or full circle skirt. So you have to well, I shouldn't say you have to, but I need to make a pattern for that. Now, soft shades are hand sewn. The pieces of fabric are hand stitched onto the twill tape used to wrap around the frame. There's so many ways to finish a soft shade. The shade could have a balloon lining which sits away from the struts. A fitted lining sits against the struts. The lining does not have to be white. Any color can be used that coordinates with the face fabric of the shade. I use self-trim of the struts to cover the stitching and also for the top and bottom of the shade. There's many different shades for many different soft shades that you can make. Gathered, pleated, wrapped with 2 seams, multi-paneled with seams at all the struts, each panel stitched individually to the wrap struts, top and bottom of the frame. So on this, the outside face fabric was like a rose pink, rose pink. I want to say mauve, but it definitely wasn't mauve. Now, the lining that I used for this, so if you look at the shade, these flowers that you're seeing are not the face fabric. That's the lining. So when it's lit, you're going to see it come through, almost like with the double-sided PVC that we looked at, that one shade. But this you're going to see more because you don't have anything that's in between. It's just fabric against fabric. So my lining that I used had
Lovely, by the way. It's
it
absolutely
had,
lovely.
thank you. It had like a chartreuse
Mhm.
background, and then it had the same pink flowers. So this is the look that I wanted to get, and I thought it turned out nice.
Gorgeous.
Now there's another way. This is another way. This is like one of the shades that I taught myself how to do. There's a lot of things that I would have done differently, but this is another way of finishing the inside of a shade. So I had my face fabric, then this was my lining, and what I did is I put the 2 pieces of fabric together and I stitched it so everything is wrapped with twill tape. Your struts are all wrapped, your bottom and your top ring. So you're actually going to stitch your fabric. These were all different pieces that I used. You're going to stitch it to that twill tape on your frame. And you have to, before you stitch it, you have to pin everything on, and you have to, it's cut, the pieces are all cut on the bias. And you have to manipulate, stretch it, pin it, lots of pins, and then you're going to start stitching. In fabricating this type of shade, the top, bottom, and 2 struts will be wrapped with twill tape. You wrap the 2 struts temporarily that make the halfway point that are opposite of each other. Roll your fabric on a piece of paper to make a pattern from one wrap strut to the other, trace with a pencil. The pattern should be placed on a fabric so it is on the bias. The reason for the bias, like I said before, there's a lot of pulling and stretching to make it taut. If you were to tap the fabric when pinned before it is stitched on the frame, it should sound like a drum. So the materials needed for this soft shade was fabric, lining fabric. I like to use 100% cotton or lawn. I prefer to make my linings pleated at the top of the frame. The lining will sit against the struts. Lampshade frame, twill tape, lots and lots of small pins, needle and thread. I use a darning needle from Bowen, less likely to snap because you're going to snap needles. Polyester thread, pliers to pull your needle, because you're stitching through layers and layers of fabric, and trim is optional. So this is a picture of my pleated lining. It's almost like a champagne color. And then this is the shade. When it's lit, it almost looks like sun rays coming through. So to wrap your frame with the twill tape is you're going to wrap the top and the bottom of the frame for a soft back shade. I have a small piece to the right of the strut, which is right here. I then wrap the twill to the left and do a partial figure 8 around the strut, which is here. Then start wrapping around the top and bottom frame. I don't like to do a full figure 8 at each strut as it gets too bulky. So this is where you're wrapping around, and then you're wrapping around, and then you're going to go over that little piece that you left, and you're just going to continue. And when you get to another gimbal, when you get to the gimbal, you're going to do the same thing that you did when you started. You're going to make sure that you go around, but I don't do a full figure 8. Somebody else might be comfortable with doing it that way. As you're wrapping the twill tape, try to wrap at a 45-degree angle as you go. You need to wrap as tight as possible. Once you start pinning and sewing the fabric onto the twill tape, you don't want any sagging twill tape, because then you're going to have sagging fabric on your lampshade. As you're wrapping, use a needle grabber to tighten what you just wrapped. So you're gonna, does everybody know what a needle grabber is? It's round, maybe a little bit bigger than a quarter, and it's like a rubbery kind of thing. You want to tighten the twill tape as you go along. Now, this was when Seal and Susan did the podcast Pick a Project Challenge. I decided to make a gathered lampshade with a ruffle at the bottom. As I never made one before, the first one I made got put in the trash. I saved the frame, but I just ripped it all off. I then rethought the process. Of course, I rethought it when I was laying in bed, and not sure if it's the right way to fabricate this type of shade, but it turned out okay. So here it is. I wrapped the twill tape around my top and bottom of the frame. I was making a gathered ruffled shade, obviously. Now this looks pretty confusing. The picture on the left is showing the gathered face fabric attached to the twill wrap frame with the pleat lining pleated, pinned and ready to be stitched. How I did this: I cut 2 pieces of fabric when seamed together would be 2.5 times the circumference of the top ring, the height that I calculated, the height of the frame top to bottom, plus 1.5 inches, the amount that will be cut away from the top of the shade, which is, you always have to leave enough here because you're going to manipulate, and then it gets, once you stitch, it gets cut away. I also added the height of 2.25 inches, 1 inch for the ruffle and 1.25 for the underside of the ruffle, which is this. Normally, you wouldn't stitch seams in the face fabric of a gathered shade. You would overlap the 2 pieces. If I overlapped the fabric, the ruffle wouldn't be in one piece and would have a gap possibly showing. I then machine stitched a double row to gather the fabric at the top and bottom. I gathered and pinned the face fabric to the twill at the top of the frame, then stitched with the streetly stitch. That's a special stitch that you use for lampshade making. I'll show you a close-up picture. The face fabric is then cut close to the stitching. Tip: do not cut away your stitches while doing this. My lining was cut the exact measurement of the bottom ring with seam allowance added. The height was cut the measurement from top to bottom of the frame plus 3 inches to be cut away after stitching to the frame. I stitched the lining seams, and they will line up to the seams of the gathered face fabric once attached. I pleated the lining and pinned it to the top of the frame. To be stitched with the streetly stitch, one stitch I don't know if I just read this. Once stitched, the lining will be cut close to the stitching. The picture on the right shows the bottom of the frame facing up. This is the bottom of the frame. It's now pinned. This is facing down. You can see where the 1.5 inches extended, which is here. Once the lining is straightly stitched, it is cut close as done before. The face fabric, wrong side up, is ready to be gathered and pinned to the bottom of the frame. So this will be gathered here and pulled up here. Once this is all stitched, this will be pulled up and pinned, and then you're going to stitch along here to this part of your frame. It sounds so confusing, but as you're doing it, it's not as confusing. So now here's the straightly stitch a little bit closer, and you make a stitch up and down here, and then you come out, you go up and down, you go over, come up and down, and go over again. This is the bottom of the frame with stitched to the twill tape, and then the excess fabric is cut away. Now, 4 gimbal tidies were made and placed around the gimbals. These are the gimbal tidies. This is so cuts into the lining where the gimbals meet the top of the frame won't show. The gimbal tidies are cut on the bias 1¼ inches wide by approximately 15 inches. Press the bias in half, then raw edges to the center, press in half again. I tend to cut the gimbal tidies about 3½ inches long. The gimbal tidies will be wrapped around the gimbals and again stitched to the outside at the top of the frame with the straightly stitch. So they're going to be stitched here. Cut the ends off close to the stitching. Here you can see where I stitched the face fabric to the bottom of the shade. So here I stitched it to the bottom of the frame, and this is my ruffle that's extended now. When stitching all these layers together, you will definitely need a strong needle and pliers to pull the needle through. Come on. I made self-trim to go around the top of the frame and then added trim to the top and to cover my stitching to the bottom of the frame just above where the ruffle started. So this is the self-trim that I made, and that's on the bias. And as you can see, it covers these gimbal tidies. Now, so in your lining at the top here, before you actually can stitch, when you're in the pinning process, you have to clip down so your fabric, almost like when you're doing the ring set with a drum shade, you have to clip, you just clip a little bit at a time, because your fabric needs to come on the outside of where the gimbals are. And that's where you put the tidies, because you want to cover all that clipping. You don't want to see any raw edges or anything. You want it to be completely finished. Here's a close-up. This is the lining pleated. This is your gimbal tidy. And actually there's a cut that's under here and you don't see it. Actually, this is where the seam is. So I take that back. You can stitch so far of your seam, and then you don't have to cut this part, because down your edges from where your seam is will be turned under, and you'll automatically have it and a little bit of an opening, and this gimbal tidy will cover that. But if you didn't have a seam, you'd have to clip a little by little so that your fabric will be on the sides of your gimbal.
It looks very neat and tidy. You do pretty work.
Thank you. Now this is a picture of the inside. This is your ruffle that's at the bottom. And it's all completed, pleated, and finished, and there's no stitching is showing. And you don't have to, that's the other thing I learned doing my online class. You don't have to use matching color thread. You could use white thread, because your stitches are not going to be showing. Now this is a shade that I did with one of my classes. It was a carousel shade, and it had pleated lining, very tiny pleats, and it had trim. This trim was all hand stitched on, and then we had the fringe, and then more gimp was stitched on top of the fringe. And then this is another view. It's not the right size, right lamp that it's on, but the fabric was pleated at the top, came down, and then there was about, I'd say, an inch drop here. And that's where you put your trim. And then this is a large whimsical drum shade that I made for the entrance of a gallery in Colonial Williamsburg. And then this one, wallpaper can be used on the inside of the shade, drum shade. You would apply the wallpaper to the one-sided PVC, not the side that has the paper that peels off, and you stick it on. And then you do the same thing, you just tuck around, and it just moves, cotton, I think, is a lot easier to tuck under, and the more heavyweight or embroidered fabric, it's a little bit tougher because it's thicker. But if you persevere, it'll work. And that's it. That's my presentation. And I hope I didn't confuse everybody. If you have any questions, you can always email me. I'll be more than, happy to help.
What is your email for
Oh,
everybody in case they want it, and I'll
okay.
type it into the notes here. Okay.
Okay. It's
Hang on.
Susan's. Oh,
Wait,
sure.
wait. I'm looking for my notes. This would be, oh, Catherine says this is a fabulous workshop webinar, and I agree. It is awesome. It is awesome.
I mean, there's just so much to cover, to talk about. I could do it for 2 hours or 3 hours, but we don't have enough time. And, the books, when you look at the books, they only give you so much information. But as you do it, you say, oh, I could do it another way. Or, oh, it's the same thing when you're doing your window treatments or your pillows. You
Right.
find your way of doing things. And I find, I don't know how many people, I mean, I should have shares in Freight Check because I use so much of it because I don't want to see any threads. I just don't want to see threads showing. And, we all have our own way of doing things. And I always remember being told there's really no right or wrong way to do things.
It sounds like you can be very, very creative in your choice of materials and style on your lampshades. You are getting so much praise here. We've got clapping hands, and it just goes on and on and on, Susan. Your head's just going to be so big when you get done looking at all this. So it's
Yeah.
awesome. Everybody is very impressed with this presentation. I do have a couple of questions, just like where do you have a source for purchasing the what's it called, the PVC in the UK and in the United States in case somebody wants to start doing it?
Um, I was using a supplier. He was in New Hampshire. He sold his business, and it was taken over by a gentleman in California.
Mhm.
And I won't use him again, and I won't mention names. I was ordering my frames, my ring sets from him, and my ring sets were coming with rust.
Oh, yeah.
Also, the pressure sensitive styrene that was arriving was crushed.
Hmm.
I couldn't use any of it. Um, so I knew Danelle's was in the UK, and I follow a lot of people that are in the UK that do lampshades, and they get most of their supplies there, and that's where
And can
it
you
was sent.
spell that?
Sorry,
Can you spell it? Because I'm gonna put it in the chat.
D,
Dimel's.
it's DANNELLS, and it's also, you could look, Needcraft. on, on the internet. Needcraft. I believe that's how it is, Needcraft.
N, okay. Or Needcraft, Needcraft,
Yes, but it's Danelle's, and
Dannels, or Needcraft for supplies in the
yes,
UK.
and there's another one that I get my spiders from, or you can get the frames from, and that is oh if I can remember, homemakers homemakers heaven. So it's homemakers and then
Okay,
it's heaven.
okay, got it.
And so they don't sell as many things that have US fittings, but they do have the spiders where you can use the UK frames and
Mhm,
just put the spider on top of your harp where your finial will screw on.
mhm,
And you can just take your shade right off of that. You can clean your shade. You don't have to, or if you want to change the light bulb, you
mhm.
don't have to unscrew your finial and take your shade off that way. It just comes right off of your the
Oh, that's
spider.
fine. Now, is this Homemaker's Heaven? Is that in the UK as well, or is that United States?
Yes, that's in the UK as well.
Okay, so if our members can just Google those names, it should come up online.
Yes, and if not, I'll give you my email address, and
Okay,
anybody can email me any information that's needed. I don't mind sharing.
okay.
Um, So I just find, do you know
Here,
what else you could do on Etsy? There is someone you'd have to search the
mhm.
name. I can't recall. I can find that information out as well.
Well, go ahead and give out your email. I'll type it in as well. I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay.
That way we can
So
get.
my email is extra so ordinary, and it's XTRA, so
Right.
ordinary,
Uh-huh.
at gmail.com.
Okay.
So anything that you need, any more information, anybody wants to know anything, just send me a note. Um, it's not as complicated, just tedious to do. Drum shades can go fast. You can do those quickly. It's just the rings. And as you're doing them, it gets better and better. And
Practice makes
you know,
perfect.
you kind of know what fabrics to stay away from.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Susan. I appreciate it. This was a wonderful presentation. If y'all didn't know, she was so nervous, but
I was so
I thought she did fantastic, and I hope it got easier for you as you went because you would never know you were nervous. You did a great job.
thank
And
you.
um, and actually, you guys, Susan's the one who edits and puts out our recorded version of our webinars. So she's going to have the fun task of watching and listening to herself do this again, which
So,
it's harder for to listen and hear yourself and see yourself. And she'll be getting it out on our website soon because I don't know about you guys, I'll probably want to watch this again, and you probably will too, especially if you want to try it out again. So thank you. Your lampshades are stunning. And I appreciate you doing this. I know it took a lot of time and effort on your part. So
well, thank you.
I
I
do
appreciate
I do
it.
see one quick question, which I think is a
Oh,
very good question. Pricing suggestions. How do you price your lampshades?
well, well, I guess that's the same. I probably underprice myself. But first of all, I calculate what all my supplies are,
Mhm,
and then I try to figure out how long it's going to take me to make it.
mhm,
If I have to supply the fabric, then obviously that has to be added in. But if somebody else is supplying the fabric, I try to tell them what to get and what not to get.
mhm.
So the pricing, I think it's hard to say. I would say it's almost how you're going to price if you're
It's
making
your
a.
hourly rate plus your supplies, I would imagine, right?
Yeah,
You do
yeah.
time
And
study on your practices and figure out how long it's going to take you and type it, you
that's
know,
right. And not
right.
where I was doing that ruffled lampshade where I had to take it apart and threw it away. So
Yeah,
that won't work.
right,
So
right.
forget that.
Well,
But to me, that's the only way I learn is,
mhm,
I think, oh, this is not going to work, but there might be an easy way to do it. And
right.
sometimes I know I got to get off. Sometimes you look at shades and I'll look at them on Instagram and I'm trying to look at them upside down and I can't see them from upside down. But there are ways of attaching the ruffle as a separate piece. And I still want to play with that and I want to figure that out. I want to figure out how to make those lampshade skirts, the box pleated lampshade skirts. I mean, there's so much still that I have to learn that I want to learn. And I think it's a lot of fun.
It looks like fun. It truly, truly looks like fun. Does anyone else have any other suggestions or questions? Another thing, if you all want to look Susan up, she is on Instagram. Just look it up under Extra So Ordinary. It comes right up and you'll see pictures of her lampshades there. Some of them are the ones that she shared with us today because I've looked at her Instagram. She's got some pretty stuff on there. So.
Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for, putting up with my nervousness. And I appreciate it. I appreciate
Mhm.
everybody coming to listen. I really do. Thank you
Well,
again.
thank you all for logging in and listening today. I thought this was a great webinar. It'll be probably one of our best of the year. And we will not see you next month. We will see you in August, but don't forget you will be receiving a document from me or from us rather to register for our scholarship drawing in August. So August will be a fun month to log in. So we will see you all then. And in the meantime, everybody have a great day. All right. Bye.